There we go.
Hi, welcome to our 3-day sugar-free challenge. Glad to see you guys here. Shout out to Laura and Patty and Barbara and Layla. And I think I saw Jennifer is here. That's my sister. Christy, Kat, and hopefully there'll be lots more joining us. And if you're watching later, a lot of people watch it later recorded. So welcome to everybody watching it. And if you are watching it, this is 3 days, so today's Thursday, our first day. And if you have questions that you want answered during the call, but you can't make the live calls, just send them in to us. Email, respond to this email that you got with the video, and send your questions in. So, Caitlin, are we going to do a Facebook Live link as well?
Oh, did you want me to do that one?
Well, if you don't
Wasn't
have
sure.
it,
Oh
I
yeah, I thought you were going to.
forgot to. That's okay. We'll do it tomorrow. All right, so now it's just going to be our Zoomers, Zoomy Zoomers. So what we're going to do today is we want to start. Some of you guys have been with us before, but a lot of people that are watching this are new. So we want to tell you a little bit about ourselves and why we're here and why we feel like getting off sugar is so important for your health. I think it's like a really great place to start, don't you, Caitlin?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So basically, I've been into the health. I've been really into health my whole life, honestly. But in 1997, I got into a raw food diet that was sugar-free because I had candida, systemic candida, and I got myself completely healed by eating raw foods. And I was still, I went for a whole year like completely sugar-free, which meant like no fruit or anything, but I was still able to maintain really great health by being balanced. And so we're not just talking about being an extremist because that never works in the long run. But like I have 22, I guess it's going on 23 years of experience with super clean eating, with eating like what I consider to be a sugar-free diet, no white sugar. And of course I've slipped up from time to time, and we'll talk about that as well. But basically, Caitlin and I joined forces in 2011 and started, well, a little bit after that, but I started Pure Joy Culinary Academy in 2011, which is an online culinary school as well as in person. And we've taught people all over the world. And the biggest question I always hear, and I've even run into people at the grocery store back when I lived in San Francisco, like still, like I'm still, still trying to get off sugar, or I'm still trying to heal my candida. And so the reason I keep bringing up candida is it is a big, like, it's a big problem in our lives because we're so many of the foods we're eating are feeding the bad bacteria in our gut, and candida seems to be one of the biggest symptoms that shows up. Just call it pathogens, yeast, mold, fungus. I mean, all of us get exposed to that from time to time. So if you're joining and you have symptoms, some kind of symptom like itchy skin, eczema, you get the creepy crawlies after you eat sugar at night, like when you're laying in bed, you just feel like you can't sit still, you have restless leg. All those things are usually tied to sugar, as well as we know, diabetes, prediabetes, type 1 and type 2. So many things are tied to like our consumption of high, I'm just going to say high glycemic foods because it's not just white sugar, it's a lot of different things. But basically, getting back to who we are, Caitlin and I joined forces over 6 years ago now, and we've been running these online programs, and they've been so popular. And it's basically called Keto Gone Green, which is a getting your body off, like eliminating foods and getting your body like getting right with your body. And whether you start with cleaning up your diet or maybe just getting more spiritual, doing more meditation, tuning into yourself more, there's a lot of different ways to start. Maybe you start with yoga, but in the end you get to a point where you're really listening to your body and you're listening to more things around you. You're listening to divine, you're listening to source, you're listening to um, like just your energetic fields, and even just being able to be more intuitive or empathic, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like where you just can like know something before it happens. And that's been happening to me a lot. I'll think about a person and then I look down and there's a text from them. And it happens more and more the cleaner you get. So starting with our vessel is really important. And then, we can always get into other areas as well, which we get into in our 30-day program. But this 3 days, we're just going to talk to you about getting off sugar. And and why we think it's so important. So, Caitlin, let's hear a little bit about your sugar-free adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I feel like both of us have our own unique experiences, and that's what makes these 3-day challenges so fun. Is because we can totally relate to everyone's pain points. And since putting this out, the last challenge we did was in January, but I've gotten a flood of emails from you guys saying like sugar is ruling your life and like really just in pain of it's causing you, dis-ease in the body and how much you really, really want to get that sugar bug off your back. And I know for me, I was a sugar addict kid. I used to hide candy and sugar under my bed. My mom used to find me in the bathroom, in the shower, locked myself in my room eating it. And I mean, I was just completely addicted. And if I could only eat candy for every single meal, I would have. And thank God I had a mom who wouldn't let me do that. But it led to a lot of other health challenges throughout my life and a lot of gut imbalances because that sugar train continued through teenagehood, and I was eating a lot of fast food and just really, really unhealthy, toxic food. And I ended up getting an autoimmune disorder, and that really triggered a lot of systemic inflammation in the body. And so my only choice was to start cleansing, start cleaning up my diet. And ultimately, I went sugar-free for like full sugar-free, just like Elaina had mentioned, for 8 months. And it was the best thing I had ever done for myself. And it really is true that you can overcome these cravings and these addictions. And I am happy to say that there isn't a day that goes by that I want sugar. I know even if I have a little coconut sugar or something, I get an instant headache. Like I'm really in tune with my body now, and I know how it affects me, especially like as, oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you cut out for a second. You're
Okay.
back.
Um, yeah. So anyways, so excited for everyone to be here. And we're going to cover a lot in these 3 days. And Elena's going to get to a quick and easy sugar-free recipe today. But really, it's all about cleaning up the diet. And it takes about 2 weeks to really get over a sugar habit. So we're going to give you a lot of tips and tricks on how to keep moving through these days after the challenge and how to really clean up your diet and really get rid of some of those cravings for good. It is possible, and really excited for that. So quickly, I'm going to go over what we're going to cover in the next 3 days. Of course, we're going to be doing a recipe class every day. And we're going to also talk about what leads to sugar cravings and an actual sugar addiction, which is very, very common, especially in the US. And really talk about, well, why is sugar so bad for us? Why are we so focused on this topic? Why do we think this is one of the #1 key ingredients to get out of your diet? And then tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about the types of sugar and which sugar alternatives are okay, what can you eat when you're going sugar-free, and some of the more science behind the sugar addiction. And then of course all of our tips and tricks on how to move through these intense sugar cravings, and maybe how to get your kids or your family on board with you. Maybe you have little ones who are addicted to sugar like I was, and you're realizing it's really time, because we're also going to talk about how sugar affects the mood, and especially in little ones who have mood disorders and stuff like that. So we're going to get into that, and then really our biggest strategies for moving forward with this. So really excited for that.
Yeah, and it I think what's important is to think about sugar as an actual addiction. Like people think, oh, it's no big deal because it's been socialized into us from when we were children. We would get a lolly from, at the bank, or you go to not at the dentist, thank God, but you go to a doctor and you get a shot, and then it's like, here's a sucker, so that's like what we use, our biggest tool we use to soothe and comfort ourselves. So I just want to start by saying, you haven't done anything wrong. You're not a bad and wrong person. It's the one drug that's completely acceptable in our society. Like, I go to places, and I'm never indulging in the sweets that they've put out, and everybody's like, oh, come on. And even alcohol, like, oh, just have one. And alcohol can turn into sugar in our bodies as well. So just start by just letting yourself off the hook. Whatever you've done up till today is in the past. and you're here for a reason. So let's just take a moment to just like take a deep breath in. Close your eyes for a second. Hold that breath in. Slowly let it out. And just while your eyes are still closed, just know that your higher self brought you here for a reason. The reason you're on this call today or listening to this later is because there's some part of you that feels like, yeah, I need to make a change and I'm ready. That's the biggest key. We can't change people. Oops, that's my 11:11 alarm. It's 11:11. We can't change people that aren't ready to change. How many times have we heard, "Oh, will you help my sister?" Or "Will you help my mom?" Or I'm like, do they want help? So just remember that this is about you. It's not like, of course, you can influence your children and possibly your spouse, but we can't go around trying to fix everybody. Just it's about coming within, and maybe that's part of our problem is that we're trying so hard to fix other people. So let's just think for a moment about why you're here and what you would like to get out. What are the reasons for going off sugar? And if you want to type that in the chat, we'll get to those comments. So take your time while we're talking and you can just type in the chat like anything you've been dealing with and like your frustrations and or why you're ready to give up sugar. Because the first part of anything, whether it's just eating healthier, getting off gluten, getting off sugar, is deciding that it's time and also putting it in writing. Like, yes, I'm ready because, and this is why. And um, don't underestimate the power of prayer and asking your angels and guides or whoever you pray to for help and saying, I can't do this alone. I'm a human and I'm doing the best I can and things are getting thrown at me left and right. And if it's not one thing, it's another. But if I ask for help, there are so many forces that are just waiting to help us. And I love praying to the angels and just asking them for their help and praying to my guides and praying to, the divine source. Like please help me, please, support me. And that's how I was actually able to give up sugar is one, just continuing to ask for help, but two, like acknowledging that it was a problem. Just like they say in the 12-step program, the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that we have a problem, right? So you're ready to do this if you're here. You know you're ready because you're here and you're listening and you are capable. You're capable of making these changes. And that's what we've got to keep telling ourselves. And even if you want to journal that, we're going to give you an opportunity in a minute to like write down either on your phone or your tablet or your computer or in a journal, like, I'm ready for this. And, so just start thinking about that. Like when you start putting things down and writing, how important that is to get yourself to the next step and deciding that you're ready.
Yeah, and really utilize that chat. We're all here to support each other. If you're going through a challenge, it's so likely that someone else is going through that too. And Elaina and I have both been through it all, especially with the sugar addiction. So you're definitely not alone. This is a very safe space for us to share. And we really want to make this as interactive as possible and want to give you guys the information that you're looking for. So
Yeah.
I love seeing some of those come up in the chat. If you want to just take a minute and write down or type in your why for quitting sugar, we'd love to support you.
Yeah. And, if it comes to you later during this chat, write it down. And at the end, we can even open it up to questions if you want to be on video and talk. But we're always reading the chat. So either way is great. But we're just going to kind of keep going with some of our points we want to get across to you today. And like Caitlin said, we also want to make it interactive so that we're not just talking and that you guys get a chance to ask your questions. But the biggest thing, so a couple things we want to cover today is this is like relatable, I think, to everyone. Is just, have you ever been frustrated with your inability to keep your promise to yourself? It's like you're wrestling with your own mind and the endless back and forth of quitting or reducing or detoxing from sugar. Like you do it, and then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh God, I'm back on my old habits. And I think that this is really relatable to all of us. And it might not be sugar. For some, it might be, wine, or for some others, it might be that they keep eating gluten, even though they said to themselves that they've decided to stop. So that, I just want to put it out there that that's a common thing, all of these things, and especially giving up sugar. And like Caitlin said, tomorrow we'll talk about all the types of sugar. We are, yes, definitely talking about white sugar, but we're really talking about anything that we're using to soothe ourselves. If you find yourself eating when you're not hungry or eating something sweet even after a meal, even though you're not hungry, or someone offers you something and you wouldn't have even thought of it, but now that it's in front of you, you're like, oh, I have to have it. Like think about cupcakes in the office or even just chocolate. I mean, chocolate is one of those foods that we all love and adore, but if it becomes an addictive thing where you find that you're just like, oh my God, I went through a whole chocolate bar and I was mindless about it. I didn't even realize I was doing it. This is something we can all relate to. Like everybody laughs, like, yeah, I'm eating a whole bag of cookies, like watching a movie or in the car, like all those things. So we're not alone in this, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times what happens though is we wake up in the morning or we go to bed that night and saying, tomorrow's the day that I quit sugar. Tomorrow's the day that I do my detox and get off of some of this bad stuff. And then later that next day, let's say on a Monday, by noon, you're like, oh, well, I'm kind of hungry. And then you start your pattern. So the reason that happens is because we haven't set ourselves up for success. And so that's one of the biggest tools is to have the recipes handy, to be ready for success and not just be willy-nilly about it like, oh, I don't know, I'll just figure it out. Because when does that ever work? When we just say we're just going to figure it out on our own, like, I'm going to quit sugar, but I don't really have a plan. Like, that's probably not your best strategy. And we've tried, I'm sure you guys have tried a lot of things, sugar detoxes, diets, and even like you've done it for a week or two, like we said, and then something like in you just like, I have to have that thing. And that's a completely normal thing. It's something that I call candida consciousness, but it's just could be called parasite consciousness. The beings in our body, the bugs, the energy, the fungus, whatever, it is a living being, even though maybe it doesn't have a head and eyeballs, it has a consciousness. And so we have to realize that we're working on a lot of levels with this. And so we have to get super determined and we have to set ourselves up with the tools that we need to actually do this and follow through. Anything else you want to mention about kind of like common things that happens to people, Caitlin, that we feel like we can all relate to?
Absolutely. I mean, I know for me, it was a lot of social pressures. So have you ever felt pressured, at a social event or, why aren't you having a drink or you're not eating sugar? Like, why not one little bite? So I feel like that's definitely something that really was hard for me when I was trying to change, is really just finding that support in my family systems and social systems, and not feel like I'm crazy for wanting to do something that's out of the norm. And really, if you look at it in other terms, like it's kind of crazy the amount of sugar that we eat. Like we're looked at as crazy for wanting to not eat it, but why don't we look at everyone who's eating so much as maybe a little bit off their rocker? When we know the statistics and we know, it leads to diabetes and joint pain and different cancers and candida. So yeah, that's definitely one that's relatable for me. And we're going to talk about that actually on day 3, is like how to navigate social situations and how to navigate being at home with your family when they're eating all the sugary treats. Because that's another big thing, is like, if you have it in your house, it's going to take a lot of willpower for you in your moment of weakness to know that it's there and to not go eat it. Because I know, like, for our household, we just don't keep a lot of that stuff around because it's going to be tempting. And using our willpower, we've talked about this over and over, but willpower doesn't work and it eventually runs out. And then you find yourself an hour or two later, after you kept saying no to yourself that you weren't going to eat it, and then finally you just cave in because it's there. So we're going to talk a lot about just like having it out of the house completely, or maybe your family can help support you in a way that they have their own cabinet that you don't go into. That kind of stuff can be really helpful. And we'll talk a lot more about that.
Yeah, and just one more thing, and then we want to talk about why we do consider sugar a drug. But so just one way to know, like if you're wondering if like, am I an actual addict? Do I have a sugar addiction? Like if you find yourself hiding your sweet treats from other people, like other people you live with, or like burying things in the bottom of the trash, I've been there. Like, oh, I don't want anybody to know I had that ice cream. You're a sugar addict. Like, and that's okay. If you feel shameful about it, then it's something that's why maybe one of the reasons you're here is like, yeah, I'm just ready to like give this up. And you can't do it alone. So we're here to support you, not only for these 3 days, but if you want to join our 30-day detox program, which we'll talk more about later, maybe on day 2 and 3, it's something that you can really get on board with for a whole month and beyond. And like, if you want to just kind of come and be part of our Pure Joy family, we've always got stuff going on. We're always offering challenges. We're always doing things because we know that we can't do it alone. And one of the reasons I'm successful is because it's my job. It's because I do this 24/7, and I'm being an example and I'm teaching. So maybe finding ways to put yourself in situations where you are the example. And that can be huge. Like, you know how the teacher, like if you're teaching other people, like maybe get yourself certified as a raw food chef and start teaching people or whatever you decide for you. And then you're like in a role where you're like, people are like, oh, she's not doing it, I can do that too. Like, she can do it, I can do it. Or he can do it, I can do it. Anyway, I want to get into a little bit of statistics. I'm not going to go for too long, but some of the reasons why we consider it a drug. And one is, and you guys have all heard this, but mice will kill themselves on sugar versus food, and or they will choose sugar over cocaine in their cages. That's how addicting sugar is. And the other thing you'll find with sugar, the reason it's addicting is if you are what we call a sugar burner versus a fat burner, which we'll get more into in our actual course. When you're a sugar burner, you need to eat every 1 to 2 hours. And I've been with friends that are sugar burners, and they're constantly needing to eat because you just need that new hit, because otherwise you're going to crash. So sugar is one of those things that brings you up and then you just crash. And most of us who've ever tested our blood sugar or done a continuous glucose monitor, you know what foods are spiking your glucose, and it's different for everyone. So, and it might not just be white sugar. It could be things like donuts and bread and, you know, innocent little things like, oh, it's just a bun on a hamburger, but you know, that could be completely spiking your levels and wanting you to keep putting more and more input, more input, more input. So that's what creates an addiction, when you just keep needing it to feel good. But I pulled up this website and it talks about the sugar consumption habits of Americans. We are #1 in the world for the average daily sugar consumption per person. And this was back from 2017, so it keeps increasing. 126.4 grams of sugar a day per person. 3 grams is a teaspoon, so do the math. It's a lot of grams. And so we're I mean, Germany's the next country, but we're like still 20 grams ahead of them. So that's huge. And it's because it's in all of our food. And there's a lot of information out there about, like, you know, things like kidney disease. And of course we know diabetes and all the things, but so many things can be tied back to sugar consumption. So there's a lot of stats on sugar consumption, but I really won't go through them all. But drinks are a big source of sugar. And if you decide to start testing your blood glucose, you want to test it in the morning about an hour after you've woken up. And it should be below 100. The great balance is somewhere between 70 and 90 on it's called millimolars. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, when you test your blood glucose, you'll get a number, and it should be between 70 and 90. If it's always high, like 115 to 126, you could be pre-diabetic. So the best way to start tuning into what sugar is doing to your body is start testing your blood glucose, and you can get a super cheap monitor. We cover this in more detail in our actual 30-day program, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can get to the recipe and then talk about some of these others if you want, Elaina.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm just going to take my video off for a second while I just get my screen ready, because I got to turn it to the kitchen.
Yeah, so today we're going to learn how to make a really quick and easy macadamia cheese sauce. And the reason why we started with this recipe is because Elaina and I are big believers that if you have a really yummy, delicious sauce that you can put over a salad or steamed veggies or your favorite protein, it really, really helps with satisfaction. And that's a really big one. When we're trying to cut out sugar, we still want to feel satisfied, and we want to not have to be reaching for something after our meal. So something that's really high in healthy fats and very flavorful, and also has some really good protein. Those are all going to be keys for helping you get off sugar. And that's why we really advocate for a higher fat, lower carb diet, because time and time again, we have our clients who just eliminate cravings just because they're feeling more satisfied and satiated. So that's a really, really big one. And this recipe, I know Elaina will talk about, but You don't have to use macadamia nuts if you don't have them. This recipe works really well with a lot of other nuts and seeds, which Elaina will go into. So this is going to be a really great staple recipe. So I hope you have your recipes in front of you, and Elaina, you can take it away.
I did that without looking. I centered myself really well. Okay, so yes, like Caitlin said, this can be done with something other than macadamia nuts. You can use cashews if you want. Cashews and mac nuts are the two like most neutral tasting nuts. If you can get your hands on mac nuts, we actually sell them on purejoyplanet.com. They're amazing. They're fresh. They're not rancid. If you're buying macadamia nuts in the store, be sure that they're refrigerated, and the roasted ones aren't so good. Anything that's roasted and salted is going to be like the oils are going to already be going rancid. And mac nuts are very fatty, so I keep mine in the fridge because they do tend to go rancid faster. Cashews is another story. I'm not a big fan of cashews, but we did just do a 5-day challenge with Natural Zing, and their cashews are super high end and super clean, naturalzing.com, and I still would soak them and rinse them. So these have been soaking for like an hour or two, and I already rinsed them. And the only reason we say to soak your macadamia nuts is really just to get them like a little plumper for the blender. If you don't have a Vitamix, it's probably imperative that you soak them, just because they're never really going to blend fully. And also, if you're not sure about like if they've been in a bulk bin or something, you want to kind of rinse any dirt or bacteria off. So an hour or two, and I use purified water. I actually use spring water that I collected myself. I'm so lucky. Okay, so we're going to start with 2 cups, and you could also use walnuts. You could use pecans. Almonds aren't going to be as good. They just never blend down and get as creamy as you want them to. Sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, those would all work. I love pumpkin seed cheese. That's totally different. But, rotate the nuts and seeds and get different nutrients from different ones. But of course, my go-to is always mac nuts. My favorite. And you can hear that they're kind of quiet as they go in because they've been softened a little bit. So the next ingredient is going to be our water, and the recipe calls for 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup. Since I already soaked them, I probably don't need the full 3/4. I did a little less than that because I want it to be like a thick cheese. But if you want it to be a thinner cheese for drizzling on things like steamed broccoli, or I like the siete tortillas, which are grain-free, and I'll do that I'll put it in the skillet as a quesadilla. And I'll put the soft cheese in there and then warm it up. And oh my gosh, it's just like a real quesadilla without the cheese. And most of you guys probably already know, but real dairy, can be very mucus forming. I know a lot of people that follow us are already plant-based, but even if you're not plant-based in all areas, we just believe that dairy is inflammatory. A lot of people with asthma, when they go off of dairy, the asthma goes away. It can cause a lot of inflammation and histamine. So let's just get that out of our diet once and for all. And also just the torture to animals, to cows, especially like mainstream dairy. Those animals are really suffering. Okay, so the next ingredient is going to be our miso. I'm using chickpea. I always use the Miso Master chickpea miso. If you don't have any issues with soy, you can just use soy miso, but make sure it's organic and unpasteurized. This says certified gluten-free. We like that because some misos do have gluten in it. And the pasteurized miso is going to be like that you find in Asian markets, is not going to be high quality. This is unpasteurized raw miso. So 1 tablespoon of miso. This is what gives the cheese its cheesy flavor. This is really almost like, and if you can think about it like a dark miso versus a light miso, the light miso is more like a white wine or a cheesiness in that way, and the dark miso is more like a beefy, like beef broth almost flavor to it. It's deeper, or like a dark red wine. So think of it that way with the flavors of dark versus light miso. Next ingredient is going to be our lemon juice. Always got to have a little lemon to make things cheesy. Especially if you're using sunflower seeds, you would want to use even a little more lemon because sunflower seeds tend to go brown. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons, which is about 1 lemon. I'm just making sure I'm not getting any seeds in there. I tend to like things a little more lemony, so I did a 1.5 lemons, but they were small. Next ingredient is our garlic. So you could either use garlic powder or raw garlic. A lot of garlic get these little sprouts in them. So what I did is I cut it open and I took the sprout out. I don't know if you guys can see that, But the sprout can cause more garlic breath, and it also can be really kind of overstimulating. And if you're a meditator, it might cause like monkey mind. So get the sprout out. I always do that. Onion powder, 1 tablespoon. This is, I don't know if you can see with my lighting, but there's onion powder in there. And this gives another like angle of the cheesy flavor. So between the onion powder, the lemon, and the miso, you're gonna get a really nice combination of cheesiness. And then just for even more fun, we're gonna add some nutritional yeast powder. And this is a tablespoon. You can just make sure you're getting quality like Premier Research Labs. Natural Zing also has a really high quality of nutritional yeast. And then for color mostly, but it's also an anti-inflammatory, is a teaspoon of turmeric. And that'll just give it more of a yellow cheesiness. And then a half teaspoon of salt. You can put more in to taste, but we'll start with a half a teaspoon and then see how we like it. So then we're just gonna blend it. And I do have a Vitamix. So of course it's going to blend quickly, but if you have a regular blender, you might need to add a little more water. So here we go. All right, so either one, it has an air bubble in it, or two, it needs a little bit more water. But I heard the air bubble, so I'm gonna start again. I just shook it. So I did add more water, so maybe on your recipes make a note. It could be up to a cup of water, even if you've soaked them. But you can see that, I don't know about with my lighting, Caitlin, can you guys see that? The vortex in there? There's
Yeah, it's too shiny.
there. So you can see the vortex starting, and you want it to be really creamy. And so this looks pretty good. It's really creamy. I know my light, I should probably just turn the light on. Let me just turn this. I have this light on because it helps to like illuminate things, but maybe just for the sake of this recipe, we'll take the light off so you can kind of see more of the texture.
Yeah, that's better.
Nice and creamy. I'm really happy with this texture. And then, like I said, there's so many things you can use this on. So why are we teaching you cheese in a sugar-free challenge? Mainly because having really satisfying foods on hand. So instead of going for the cookie, you go for the macadamia nut cheese dipped in celery sticks, or dipped in with red bell peppers, or spread over, like I said, a tortilla. Or there's just so many things. Like you could mix it in with your salad. Or, what else, Caitlin, could you use this cheese for?
Well, tomorrow we're gonna put it on a creamy broccoli kale soup. So it's so versatile, this sauce. And again, like on steamed veggies or on your favorite protein.
And I like to buy like the almond crackers. Like you can get the grain-free almond crackers. This makes a great dip for that. So the reason you're learning cheese is because when you're late at night, let's just use that as an example. It's 8 o'clock and you're watching your favorite Netflix show and you're like, I want something. So you got this made, and instead of grabbing the cookie or the chocolate, I'm going to eat the cheese. And honestly, it's so satisfying. Jicama sticks are one of my favorites. It's spelled Jicama, jicama. But in Spanish it's pronounced jicama. And that's a great treat. And you're going to feel so satisfied. So our whole course, like what me and Caitlin do, and we've been doing this forever, is getting people back in the kitchen, making their own foods, knowing exactly what you're getting. Because when you buy things packaged, did you know that they can say olive oil on there, but that they don't have to have it be 100% olive oil? It can have canola oil in it. I think there's a percentage, I should look that up, that they're allowed to put in. They're also allowed to put sugar and food coloring in orange juice and not say anything, as long as it's trying to match the regular sweetness and color of a ripe orange, because they're usually using unripe oranges. So there's a lot of tricks the industry does that we as consumers don't know about. So when you go back to making your own food, one, it's going to be cheaper in the long run, and two, you feel like it's like a creativity thing. And then you've got these satisfying foods on hand, so you don't go for the wrong things. So we're all about setting you up for success. So the first challenge for you guys for these 3 days is to get in your kitchen and make this. If you don't have mac nuts, use whatever nut or seed you have on hand. Soak it for an hour or 2 hours, but get it made and flavor balance it. Get the salt, the onion powder, the lemon flavor just the way you like it, and let us know what you think. So I see we have a lot of chats there, Caitlin, a lot of comments and or questions.
Yeah, let me just clarify about the challenge for those of you who have never done a challenge with us before. So like Elaina said, it's really all about you getting in your kitchen and making the recipe. I mean, this cheese will last you at least a week in the fridge, if not two. I know you're going to go through it way faster than that, but it's something that you can just have on hand. You know, if you're making it for a lot of people, you could even double this recipe. It's quite a large recipe. So the challenge for you is to get in your kitchen and make this recipe, whether it be today or tomorrow, and snap a photo of how you used it. So maybe you dipped it with some veggies, maybe you put it on your steamed veggies, or you put on your favorite protein. Take a picture of that and post it in our low carb challenge group that I know a lot of you are a part of. And if you're not a Facebook user, that's totally fine. This is really an accountability challenge. So we just really want to know that you've made it. Tomorrow you can let us know how you liked it. We want to hear feedback, want to hear what you used it for. And if you want to participate in actually getting some of our bonuses and freebies from completing the challenge throughout the full 3 days, then be sure to put your name on this link that I just dropped in the chat. I see some of you have already put your name on there. And as soon as you make the recipe, snap a photo and post it to the challenge Facebook group, then you can tick off your day one and you get a little point on that. And you know, there's bonus points if you're really, really wanting to get some of our freebies, is to post it on your own social media and tag us. So, you know, people can still sign up for this free challenge even after today. I'm going to be sending out this recording in the next few hours. So if people hop on late, or if you're like, hey, actually, I think this would be really great for my aunt, or, you know, my niece or something, they can still hop on. So share it with your friends and family. And then at the end, day 3, we're going to go through and see who completed the 3 days with us. But again, we're just here to cheer you on. It's, you know, the bonuses are just to help motivate you to actually get in the kitchen and make something. Because I know it can be hard. It's a learning curve, especially if we haven't done it in a while, to really set the time aside. And I know for me, when I'm, you know, not in the mood to do it, and then I do one recipe, I automatically am like, okay, what else can I do? Maybe I can prep some more stuff for my dinner tonight, or prep some more stuff for my week. So hopefully that'll be your ripple effect as well. And again, we're doing this cheese because dairy is actually can contribute to a lot of sugar cravings as well. That lactose can turn into sugar in the body, especially for eating a lesser quality dairy. So that's another reason. And dairy, it feeds the yeast and candida and stuff in the body just like sugar does. So that's another reason to try a dairy-free dip that's not from the store and doesn't have any added sugar or bad oils in it.
Yeah, and I just want to say I saw on the chat that someone asked about the tortillas I mentioned. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. I can't, but that's okay.
Yes, we can see your screen. Hold on one second. I'll spotlight it.
Brand is cassava flour, this type. There's also a chia and an almond one. Some people are allergic to almonds or just don't want to have a lot of almonds. But they are pretty low carb. 2 tortillas, net carbs are, well, 1 tortilla net carbs are 10. So you could even do half of this. But we'll talk more about in the program about lowering your carbs if that's what you think your body needs. It's different for everyone. I'm learning that more and more. Some people do really well with carbs and others don't. So we're not trying to make carbs bad. We're just really talking about sugar. But anyway, these tortillas are way better than like wheat flour or corn, because corn can be highly moldy. And then I also wanted to say so it does make 3 cups. I transferred it to this jar. So that's a lot. So you could even cut this recipe in half, honestly. And if it's just you, especially, or you and one other person. So what I'm going to do, because I have so much of this, is I'm going to dehydrate it. So any of you guys who have a dehydrator, you just spread it really thin on a dehydrator sheet, like put a parchment paper on there or a drying sheet. And then you got like a crumbly top cheese topping, which I'm going to dry some of this today and I'll show you guys. So show up for tomorrow and I'll show you how it turned out. So that's another really great trick is just dehydrate it. And you've got this like, so that cheese flavor that you're missing, you've actually got this hard, crumbly, dry cheese you can put on your salads and you can put on things.
Wow, that's such a great bonus recipe. I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
And
Uh,
Julene, Whole Foods says that Whole Foods has these siete tortillas on sale at the moment.
and you can also find them at natural grocers.
Yeah, and that's where Kristen asked where in Bend can you get them. Whole Foods and natural grocers are great places to go.
Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to talk about gluten and how that leads to, insulin spikes, and it actually turns into sugar in the body. So I love that we're talking about those tortillas because they're a gluten-free, grain-free alternative. And just quickly before we go, I know we're over time, but Elaina and I always do this. We love to give you all the nuggets. Please be sure if you didn't do it while we were on the call or if you jumped in late, we really want you to write down your intentions for getting off sugar, really writing down your why, whether it be to have more energy for your family or to show up better at work or to, not have afternoon slumps or, even to get over or help with your diabetes or pre-diabetes, any health challenge that you're going through, write down your why. And I saw some of you wrote them down in the chat. So thank you for that. We're all cheering you on over here. Elaina, did I cut you off?
No, no. I was going to say something that I'm going to save it for tomorrow about gluten. There's an ingredient I just found out that's in all of our flour, especially in the United States, probably worldwide, that's causing us a ton of problems. And it's in this thyroid book that I just read. So I'm gonna tell you guys. I'm gonna do a cliffhanger and tell you guys about that tomorrow.
And tomorrow we're going to make a really delicious, yummy broccoli soup. But I just want to quickly read off some of these because I love hearing your whys. And Kristen said she has some belly fat and her doctor said it's all sugar. And yeah, usually sugar, it does hit the belly first, especially in women. And then Christy said to get as healthy as possible so I thrive through menopause instead of just survive it. Oh, how much of us can relate to that? It's time for us all to be in optimal health and thrive and not just get by. Thank you for sharing that one. That was great. And Laura said she believes her alcohol addiction is really a sugar addiction. And Laura, thank you for sharing that. I love that you're back with us. We love having you. And it's so true. We have a lot of clients who say, well, I'm not addicted to sugar, but they're consuming a lot of alcohol. And as we know, beer, all that gluten and everything just turns into sugar in the body. So again, here to cheer you on. Avis wants optimal health. So again, if you haven't written down your why, please do, and we can share more about it tomorrow.
Yeah, we love you guys so much. We're just here for you. So even offline, like when you get this email in your inbox, hit reply and write more things and let us know what you really want. And we're always so one thing just to know is Caitlin and I are continuing to pivot. Like what is it that people want? And that's why we've decided to do this 30-day detox, whole food detox program versus our normal keto gone green because not everybody wants to be keto and we wanted to be more inclusive of the men. So if you've got a husband or a boyfriend or a kid even that you feel like needs to be on this, join it and share it with them. And we're just here to kind of like help change the world. Like I always keep thinking, God, if the whole world was off sugar, wouldn't it just be a nicer place to live? People wouldn't be like 10 o'clock at night lines at McDonald's. People would be more kind and loving and they'd be making their own food and it'd just be a better place to live. So that's one of our goals of Pure Joy Planet. And that's why it's called that is we want to spread joy across the planet. And the best way to do it is getting yourself healthy.
Yeah, it starts with self-care on you and making you number one. That old saying of put your own oxygen mask on before helping others is so true for what we consume and how we take care of our bodies. So we're really here to help you in a very holistic, full circle way. And one last thing on the recipe, does it need to be refrigerated? Yes, keep it in the refrigerator. It should last about 1 to 2 weeks.
Exactly. And if you don't think you can eat it in 1 to 2 weeks, then dehydrate it. And I'll show you guys what that looks like tomorrow.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, tomorrow, come with your questions, come with your comments. We'll see you same place, same time. And if you joined us late, I'll send this recording out as soon as I can.
Awesome. See you guys tomorrow. Thanks for joining.
Bye, everyone.